Hey guys, it's Marissa, kitchentablestamper.com. Today I've got a fun folds for you. This was inspired by my friend Tony from the Kitchen Table Stamper Craft Social. If you don't know about the Kitchen Table Stamper Craft Social, then you're missing out. This is our coffee and a mystery card. Every other Thursday we play coffee and a mystery card. The Wednesday before the game, I give you a list of clues. It supplies together. And then we meet the next day on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central in the Craft Social, and I walk you through a series of clues to make a fun project. Sometimes it's a fun fold card, sometimes it's a standard card, sometimes it's a treat. And this fun fold is today's mystery card. All right, so we're going to start with a piece of this amazing designer series paper. So Stampin' Up's fall paper this year is called Rustic Harvest, and one of the papers is these two-sided or half and half designs where you can cut and make super simple card fronts with it, and it's a trend that Stampin' Up has been doing for a little while now. So I think that this particular fun fold is going to come in handy. We're going to cut this piece of paper and make it 4 by 5 1/4, which is a perfect card front. So it's going to take a little bit of finesse because we want to leave the butterflies at the top and maybe just cut off a little excess of stems. So I'm going to start by cutting this piece into 6 by 12, and then I'm going to cut 1/4 inch off the top because I want to preserve those butterflies. We need to get this down to 5 1/4, so I'm going to flip the other way, cut 5 1/4. We're going to take off some of the stems and leaves. If we had just cut it willy-nilly into 5 1/4, we might have had lots of stems and no butterflies. So that's the way with this one. Then we're going to cut it into 6 4-inch pieces. So now it's 5 1/4 by 4. And this will yield 3 of this card because we are going to glue these pieces back to back. All right, let me cut the rest of my papers, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to cut that 1/4 inch right off of the top side of our paper, and then rotate. And now we'll make it 5 1/4, and then cut into 4-inch pieces. I love this for simple cards that pack a lot of wow. Okay, so we've got our card fronts. We're just going to do one for the sake of this video, but one 12 by 12 sheet will get you 3 cards. Now we're going to take our pieces of designer series paper, and we want to take this one with the butterfly all the way on the left side. We don't want to glue that so that it's underneath. We're going to pick that one and then one with the butterfly on the right side. And we're going to glue these two back to back, and that's going to make our card front. I'm just going to use some liquid glue, and you want to go light on the liquid glue here. The reason for liquid is because then you can slide it. And the reason for going light is you don't want to warp your designer series paper. You want it to look beautiful and smooth, have a nice sturdy card front. Now with the liquid glue, you've got time to just square everything up together. It's not going to be perfect. We're using a manual paper trimmer, so we're going to have to do a little bit of trimming to get it nice and neat. But we'll check from both sides here, and then take your paper snips and you're just going to run where you see the back pattern. Now, if you have a piece of designer series paper that is 4 by 5 1/4 and both sides are stunning, how many times do you run across that? It's one of Stampin' Up's favorite tricks, I think. They like to make both sides of the designer series paper stunning, and then you don't know where to put the glue. This is the fun fold card for you because you could just leave the one side exposed in the front and the other beautiful side exposed in the back. But for my design, I want 2 of the same. Now we're going to be very careful. This is the front of our card. This is not. If this was the front of our card, we'd end up gluing our butterfly, and we don't want that. So there's our card front. Now let's look at our card base. Card base is 5 1/2 by 5.5, basic black. It's a square, and we're gonna score at 4.25. So some of those measurements are probably pretty familiar sounding. 4.25. And now we've got our card base. Let's adhere the front to the base. I'm gonna use my bone folder, work that crease. Now I found that with this particular fun fold, it's easier to line the front of the card front up if you line the inside of your card first. So I've got over here a basic white, and it is 4.25, or it is 4 by 5.25. We're gonna put that one inside centered first, which is gonna make lining up the card front a breeze. There's our liner. 2 more little strips of that designer series paper, some coordinated black and white patterns from the same rustic fall. This is 1 by 5.25. We're gonna add one of these inside while we're there. And then we're going to adhere our card front. So what I like to do is just line up my card front to cover the liner, and then add a bit of glue along the edge. And then here, a bit more glue. Don't go all the way to the top because you've got a 1/8 of an inch all around. Close, burnish. And now we have our card front adhered to our card base. Let's trim this 1 by 5.5, or 1.25 by 5.5 inch panel on the outside with the 1 by 5.25 inch designer series paper piece. And that is the base of a really cool fun fold. All right, let's do some stamping. I'm gonna slide my sample to the side here and grab some basic white. Our ink colors are Mossy Meadow, Soft Suede, Early Espresso, and we're using the Christmas season stamp set. It's photopolymer, so I've got my Stampin' Pierce mat. And I'm gonna stamp 2 sprigs, one for inside and one for outside on this card in Mossy Meadow. I love the distinctive look that this stamp set has naturally. And then we're going to do some pine cones. I've got the big full version of the pine cone, and then the smaller, sparser details. And I'm gonna do Early Espresso. And I found that if I did the details first in Early Espresso, and then lined up the full pine cone with Soft Suede over the top, I was getting a little bit easier placement. So we're gonna do the small details and then stamp over, filling in the rest of the pine cone. And just take your time. You can see the Early Espresso through the Soft Suede ink. Just makes it a bit easier to line up. And you'll notice that it's going to look really, really dark while it's wet. But when it dries, you'll get some gorgeous shadows and highlights. So let's make one for the inside also. I love this Christmas stamp set, and it was the designer series paper itself that inspired me to combine the Christmas stamp set with the fall paper. Well, we've got the ink pads out. Let's give this a second to dry before we run it through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and we'll work on sentiments. Now, my sentiments came from the Peaceful Moments stamp set. We're gonna stamp them in Early Espresso. And inside, I'm gonna put, these are the moments we'll look back on with joy. On the outside, we'll do thank you. And here we want to stamp a little bit high of center. And there's the inside of our card. Slide that aside to dry. For the outside of the card, I'm going to stamp on this die cut. I did this one ahead. It's basic white cardstock, and we cut it with the long, wide banner from the Stylish Shapes die set. I'm going to put thank you just a bit to the right so that we have some room for our twine and butterfly embellishments. I love this font. It's got a little whimsy, but it's not goofy. It really makes me happy. All right, let's clear away the ink pads to get the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I'm gonna cut out the pine cone and leaves. I've got the seasonal labels dies here, and that's the die set that coordinates with the Christmas season. We're gonna cut out our sprig and pine cone. It's gonna take 2 passes. Get these all lined up, cut out. On the second pass, we're gonna cut our little butterflies. So we're gonna make some space. Got my paper snips here. I'm gonna cut these guys away. All right, I've lined up my pine cone and sprig for a second pass. Got a scrap of vellum and 2 butterfly dies. These 2 little cuties came from the Brilliant Wings die set, and they're going to make the perfect embellishments on this card. So let's go ahead and give that a crank. I'm going to take these little vellum butterflies right off and then fold their wings up. So I'm going to hold the body and bend the wing. What that's going to do is help me see that, and it won't get lost while I'm crafting. So the second I take it off of the die cut machine, instead of putting it down and taking the chance of losing that little die cut piece, we're going to fold it up from the body, and now it's just a little bit easier to spot as you're working. All right, there's our other sprig and pine cone. Let's get this out of the way. We need another little embellishment besides the butterflies. We're gonna do a sprig. I've got my bow punch here and a scrap of the brushed metallic cardstock. This is the one that I think they call copper. I think it looks kind of a champagne color. It goes perfect with the champagne rhinestones that we're gonna use. We're gonna cut the smaller. There it is. I don't need the stem, so I just cut, it's gonna get tucked under, so I just cut the relevant part. That's a little tip. If you're using expensive papers like foils or shimmer papers, and you're gonna do this kind of floral arrangement kind of thing, you don't need that stem. So just use from your scraps like I did. Banner is going to be wrapped twice with some linen thread and tie a big loopy bow. I love the linen thread, just that natural texture with this Rustic Designer Series paper. And then we'll adhere to the card front with one of the pine cones and sprigs. I want a big loopy bow, and let's trim the tails just a little bit. Got one of my sprigs and one of my pine cones and my loopy bow banner. Let's add some liquid glue. I like to do these with the liquid glue, and I like to do it all at one time so that I've got room to move. I'm also going to just put a little liquid glue on the stem of this leaf because I'm going to put a dimensionals behind to give it a little bit of height. So we'll take our pine cone, our leaf, and we don't want anything off the edge. Keep that in mind. Then our banner. And the banner is going to thread under the leaf a little bit there and over the pine cone a little bit. When we got everything the way we like it, then we can burnish down. Add a dab of liquid glue on the back of the foil at the stem. Again, I'm not going to go all the way up. I want it to have a little bit of lift, potential for a little bit of lift. So we'll tuck that in, glue down. Got my little edges here. I'll hold on to these little edges for jobs like this. We're going to cut 2 small pieces, and I'm going to add a small piece at the back of the leaf here to further secure, but add a little lift. And then at the back of the leaf here, kind of at the base, add a little lift. So cute. Now inside the card, we have these are the moments. Let's add a pine cone and a leaf to the inside. I was very tempted to add a butterfly to the inside, but we couldn't do the gems on the body because it would just dent the outside of the card. So we'll settle for some sprigs and pine cones. Whoops, that stuck to my finger and moved. Liquid glue. And I feel like a florist, doing a little floral arranging here. Keep it inside the bounds of the card because the front is just a little bit smaller than the inside. Again, liquid glue gives you a minute to give it a twist if you want to change the position. There's the inside of our card. Gorgeous as the outside, don't you think? Now, little embellishment. We got our butterflies and we were smart. We put their wings up so they're easy to find. Let's add some liquid glue to the body section. The wings are going to stay up. We'll put one right next to the bow, the bigger one. Don't cover your greeting. Really budge it up against the bow there. You can even go onto the twine a little bit. And then a little liquid glue on the small guy. He's going to be fluttering off the pine cone, off the sentiment. Give a second for the glue to grab. While the glue is grabbing, let's get a take your pick tool and some champagne rhinestones. I love these champagne rhinestone basic jewels. For our big butterfly, I'm going to take the biggest one, make the top of the butterfly body, medium one, make the bottom of the butterfly body. And for the little guy, we'll take the medium one, make the butterfly's head, and the tiny one, make the butterfly body. Haha, isn't that cute? I just love this fun fold card. Thanks for the inspiration, Tony. If you've got any questions about the project, email marisa@kitchentablestamper.com. And to shop Stampin' Up 24/7, you can buzz over to marisaalvarez.stampinup.net. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.